Well, hello and good morning, everybody. Here we are again for another Cars and Coffee. And if you're a car guy that wants to learn about tech and all kinds of things car, you're in the right spot. For the next hour or so, we're going to spend some time going over the subject for today, which is going to be chassis support. Oh, I'm Kenny Brown, and this is Cars and Coffee. And again, we're going to answer some questions that came into the Speed Therapy Society. And please, if you have any questions, be sure to send them in at the end. And at the end, I'll kind of go back and try to answer your questions live and see what I can do about that. So let's see. Today we're going to talk about. This is kind of interesting how this came up, and I'll go into this more when we get to the presentation. But power robbing chassis flex in Mustangs. Now, Mustangs are a unibody car. And, when I started working with them in '86, they were flexi flyers is the best way to put it. Unfortunately, we were on full cages for SCCA Pro Endurance Racing. But for the street, we had to do some interesting things to try to stiffen the chassis. So we'll get into that in a little bit. And that'll be not only the tech talk, but also be part of show and tell. We'll show you some of the products and the solutions that I've come up with to combat chassis flex, which it does a number of bad things. Let's see, we've also got some good questions this morning. And let's see, oh, yeah, YouTube. Like, click, subscribe, bell. I got them all in. And Facebook, be sure to like and then share. You can share, start a share party or watch party. I think there's some clicks in there. You can just click and invite people and do the watch party. I think let's start with a couple of questions here. This is from Greg. What do you do to the underside of a car to prevent corrosion? Boy, that's kind of that's a tough question because most of the newer cars are pretty tough underneath. The best thing, we don't do anything here. We don't treat underside of the cars because, it's most of our performance cars are not out in the winter that much. But my best recommendation for my street cars, what I do is I run them through the car wash after every snowstorm, and I get the underside. So you run through the car wash and get the underwash, and that kind of takes off all the salt and stuff. It's the salt that left on there will start to corrode. But I mean, there's products out there. I think you'd probably have to talk to somebody that actually does that for a living on what would be the best product to use. But my biggest tip is just run through the car wash, get the under car wash with it, and that kind of takes everything off. Greg also asked, this is another really good question. How do I feel about air-to-air intercoolers versus air-to-water intercoolers? Air-to-air intercooler is kind of like a turbo. The compressed air, the hot air from the supercharger goes through like a big radiator and comes out the other side cool and goes into the engine. Air-to-water is within like the intake manifold. There's going to be another little heat exchanger, and the hot supercharged air goes through that pulls the heat out via water, and it takes it to the heat exchanger in the front of the car, and then it puts the cool water back in. So there's two different ways of cooling the charged air, and you have to cool supercharged or turbocharged air because when you compress air, it gets hot, and you get too much heat, and you start losing performance, and bad things can happen if you have too much inlet temperature. So here's the thing, for a positive displacement supercharger, that's something like the Eaton, the Roush, the Whipple, any of those positive displacement was a screw type supercharger. Pretty much they're all air to water. That's simply because the little exchanger packages pretty neatly underneath the supercharger, in the manifold area. Now the centrifugal superchargers like Vortec, Paxton, or Pro Charger, they're kind of like mechanical turbos. It's like a turbo compressor driven by a belt off the motor. For that, I prefer air to air, and that's where you just the hot compressed air goes through the heat exchanger and comes out cool and into the engine. In motorsports and racing, that's all we ever use is air to air. But most of those cars are turbo cars. So for the track cars that do use like a supercharger, preferably for a Mustang on track, centrifugal, I prefer much better. Air to air seems to be the best. It's also less complex. There's fewer things to break. the more complexity you put into anything, the more opportunity there are for things to break or go wrong. So, I mean, there's two different applications. Certainly, if you're supercharging like a SUV or a truck, pickup truck, you want to use the positive displacement, the Eaton style, and for that, that's air to water. So there's, different applications for each. Let's see, Herster want to know how important is IRS lockout? Alignment kits, I'm not sure what he's talking about. Wonder if I should install such on my cars. This will help with my left rear hub issues. Yeah, Herster's had a bunch of hub issues, but I think what he's talking about, and we use this, it's actually a kit that the whole IRS carrier is mounted in rubber, and it's pretty wiggly. And so what we use is it's a kit, little pieces that slide into the rubber parts and pretty much locks it down so the IRS carrier doesn't move. I think that's what he's talking about. I mean, I would recommend it no matter what. I think you really need to lock the IRS carrier down. I don't know if that's going to help the hub situation, but I know that helps the back of the car work better if you lock that down. So that's what I'm guessing he was talking about. So that's my thoughts. Okay, now power robbing chassis.
Hey Kenny.
You there?
Yeah, Herster has one more question. I'm going to post it here for you. It came in late, so see if you can see it. Oh, I posted it into the chat. Here it goes. So when I'm changing gears in the car, I have a very annoying kickback of the car in every gear. Should I be worried, and what may it be?
Changing gears. I have an annoying kick in the back of the car. I'm not sure what that means. Whatever it is, it doesn't sound like, I'm not sure what it means, but if it's something that happens all the time and the car isn't running smoothly, it's certainly something you should look into. Annoying kick in the back. Not sure what that means. But yeah, it's if you're experiencing it, it's something that shouldn't be there. And if it's something that shouldn't be there, you need to look into it. Like I say, I'm not really sure what it is. It might be that the IRS kind of moving around the back. I don't know. But yeah, definitely look into it. Okay, so we are going to get into chassis support this morning. And let me go to, I need to move some things around here. And, oh, there's the button. Okay, here we go. Chassis support. Now this all started with this picture and a post that Ben in the Speed Therapy Academy sent in that we kind of talked about. And what you're looking at is this is an SN95, or I can't remember if SN95 or Fox, one of those cars that was converted to IRS and a coilover shock system. Now, as you can see here, the actual shock mount has pulled away from the inner fender pretty severely. And what he's talking about, this is a long post, and I kind of chopped it off just so you can see a bit bigger picture. Let's say he was throwing it in the trash. He had somebody else's like rear shock tower brace, and he said it was junk. He's going to throw it in the trash. I'm guessing that's the remnants of it here, both of the inner fender. But he says, I'm curious if I got unlucky, or maybe it's something that could be, there's something that could prevent this from some other folks in the future. Actually, there is. And this is it. This is our rear shock tower brace for SN95. And we developed this back when we started working on the IRS cars in '99 and converting them to coilover. And because we were converting them to coilover, what we did is I wanted all the load, now the shock load, but the spring loads went right in here to the rear shock mount. And they really weren't designed for that kind of load. They were designed for just the load of the shock absorber. So we added the 3-point strut tower brace. And the whole idea is we kind of capture, it captures the shock mount. The shock actually bolts right through the hole in the middle of it. And then there's 2 bolts on the side that bolt it into the mount itself, so it's pretty secure. And then we've got a 3rd one in the middle, so we actually get some level of triangulation between the 2 shock towers. And this has made a huge difference. We have never ever had any kind of issue with any kind of issue in pulling away. So let me show you real quick. If I can find me. There I am. Carrie's not here, so I'm struggling with technical stuff today. Okay, so here's what it actually looks like in person. This is the rear shock tower brace. And you can see that we have it so that the shock goes right through, and then we also bolt it to the shock mount. And then there's a 3rd spot in the middle, so you can see we've got a triangulation, and triangulation is the strongest part, the strongest engineering fixture. So let's go back. Hey, Carrie, did that come up? Hey, Carrie? Oh, she's not there. I don't think Brad's there either. Okay, I'm hoping this is working because I can't really tell. Okay, I'm gonna have to start over. Oh, this is not a good day for me. There we go. There it is. Got it back. Okay, so we got the triangulation, and that supports the shock. The other thing that we do that's different than anybody else is the typical mount for the bayonet type shock in the back is rubber, either soft or hard. Well, because all the load is going into the rear shock mount, we actually use urethane between the shock and the body so that it's no give and it stays firm. I mentioned triangulation. This is getting back to my very early days when I started my racing career back in the 70s. My exposure to chassis strength and rigidity and came from working with Formula Ford space frames. Now you can see there's a whole bunch of triangles, and this one's even a little bit better, but triangle's the strongest, most rigid engineering structure. And all the race cars back then, I mean, they had tons and tons of triangulation. That's what makes them rigid. The more rigid a race car, the better it's going to handle. The more rigid or stiffer a street car is, A, the better it's going to handle, and B, the better ride quality it's going to have, and C, it takes away rattles and squeaks. So this is what I started. This is how I started learning about chassis and strength back in the 70s. But take that and let's put it into like a full-size car, and you can see this is just kind of a drawing of a tube-frame race car. And again, there's like triangles everywhere to add strength. But when we get to a production unibody, like all the cars are today, there's not much, there's no triangulation, there's not much strength. It's just a bunch of sheet metal pieces that are spot welded together, which is why they have a tendency to flex so much. The early Mustangs really, really flexed really bad. So what we did is I came up with some solutions. Like for the flea race cars, it was okay because we had full cages, which stiffened up the chassis quite a bit. So what we did do was back in '86, the first chassis thing that we did, but even though the race cars had a full cage, the first thing we did was put jacking rails on the side. And we're doing, 6, 12, 24-hour races. The cars get jacked up a lot for tire changes, brake changes. So we put a rail that goes right along the pinch wheel. This is actually for an SN95. The Fox is a little bit longer, and I'll show you one of those in a minute. But we came up with a jacking rail so we could jack the car up quickly and easily. and we could jack one side up at once. So after the Sling program, we brought that into our street cars, because just a lowered Mustang didn't have to like crawl around the ground trying to look for a place to put your jack. You just put the jacking rail in there, and you just jack the car up. So that was the first thing we did. And the next thing we did is to stiffen up the chassis. This came a little bit later. Was the double cross subframe connector. Now this is what here. This connects the front and rear subframes. And what I did, which is called double cross, is we put the bracket in the middle that bolts to the back of the seat. There's already bolts right in the chassis, so it's just a matter of putting a nut on it. And what that does is reduces the free span versus captured length. And then also, it's kind of like, I don't know if you've ever put a yard sign up, either for a yard sale or political sign. But if you just put a piece of cardboard on a stick, it'll just flop all over the place. So that's why I always put a little T in there to keep it from flopping. And with the same principle here is by putting this T in here, that helps strengthen it so it doesn't want to twist. And we had, back when we first brought these out, we had one guy call and said that he thought it was junk because he could put either end on a cinder block and stand in the middle and it would bend. I said, yeah, but did you put a cinder block under the middle? And that kind of shut him up. So that was the second part that we did to it. And then a little later on, I wanted to add even more strength. So we had the matrix brace, which is pretty unique. A lot of people have copied our jacking rail. A lot of people have copied the double cross subframe connectors. Nobody's really copied the matrix brace so far, which I don't understand, because that's probably the most important part. But by adding the matrix brace here in the middle, you can see that we add 4 triangulations, 4 full triangulations per side. And triangles are the strongest engineering structure. And here's a little different view of it. And this is actually for, I think, the 96, 98 Cobra, somewhere in there. We actually have to shorten them up a little bit due to the transmission mount. But even so, there's still the subframe would be right here, and it still connects 4 triangulations, connects front and back, cross in the middle so it doesn't flex. I mean, this adds an enormous amount of rigidity to the center of the car. And here's what it kind of looks like underneath, all installed. And you can just tell by looking at it that that's real structure. And it doesn't add a ton of weight. Back when we first started doing these, we had like drag racing guys that wouldn't want to add these because it added, like 10 pounds or something like that. And just couldn't get through their heads that they're wasting horsepower twisting the body. When if they strengthen the body, that horsepower goes to the back. But they just didn't think that way. So let me show you a few pieces.
Hey, Ken?
Yeah.
After this, once you connect up again, I'm going to be able to control your screen so they can see you, and then I can connect you back to the presentation, so you don't have to go through the. Okay.
Okay. Well, let me start with the Fox jacking rail. This is the identical copy of what we had on the 86 Celine cars, and it's pretty long. It's like 59.5 inches long or something like that. I try to keep it under the 60 limit for UPS, but it's a good piece. I mean, it welds right to the pinch weld. And back in '86, when we first did this, the SCCA declared this as a illegal chassis stiffening device. It made no sense. We had a full cage in there, so I actually had to take a hacksaw and put just a little bitty groove, 2 grooves, so it wouldn't be considered a continual piece. In '87, they didn't mention anything about it. But this is a jacking rail for the Fox. Also, it fits the S197 and it fits Gen 1 Mustangs. But for the SN95, because it's the pinch welds are a little different, and they've got all these little darts that come through. What we did is we had to do a little different. I mean, we went to like an inch by inch and a half, and we have these holes on the other side, so the little darts that for the holding the body in place slide right into that, and you can weld that up right up there. And it's not quite as long, but equally as efficient. The other cool thing about the jacking rails is that once you jack the car up, you can put your jack stands underneath on the jacking rails, and the hole underneath the car opens up. And then the next thing is going to be the double cross subframe connector, which was the original on the market. And again, you can see that these are really nice, strong, high quality pieces. And we, unlike everybody else, we kind of pinch the ends down, so it's not an edge. And unlike others, there actually is a little bit of a bend front and rear to conform to the body a little bit better. Like I say, these have been copied by so many different people. But this is the original and still the best. And something else I might point out is all our under chassis pieces are silver zinc plated, so that for durability and rust protection. And in the beginning, we talked about maybe powder coating because we powder coat everything else. But the problem with powder coat is you have to grind it off when you weld it, or if you don't, it's going to be it's going to create noxious fumes. So by going to the zinc plating, you can weld it, and you don't knock yourself out with fumes. Now this is the matrix brace, and this is actually longer than it's supposed to be. It's simply because what we found when we started building these is there's no two chassis alike. So the whole idea is we made them a little bit longer, so that for each individual application, you can just trim this down to however it fits well. Because originally we started building these, and we found that they didn't fit some cars that were too short. So then we started building them longer. But then again, you can see that these little brackets weld right to the frame rail. This is actually for a 197 because the back is flipped. So that's kind of our matrix system. So I'm going to go back to sharing and see if it works. Okay, how do I get a full screen, Carrie, without going back to the beginning? I'll have to go to the beginning. So that's under a SN95. Now this would be under the S197. With the S197, they actually have a frame rail that runs front to back, which negates the need for the double cross subframe connector because there is no gap between the subframes front and rear. There's already a channel there. So what we do is we just do the jacking rail on the outside, we do the matrix brace, and then we just weld the matrix brace right to the existing frame rail that's right in there. So it works really good. We had one of our customers decided to use only our products. As he got this system for his S197, and he thought, well, I'll give this a try and see if it's any good. And he found the difference to be so significant that he's been a devotee ever since. And in fact, I think we just set him up with set his car up for track. And moving forward to the 550 cars, is what we found is that underneath the 550s, huge difference just in the chassis itself. Much stronger, much more rigid, and they had to because of the new suspension, the IRS in the back, and then the double arm McPherson strut in the front. Requires a much stiffer chassis than been in the past. So, in the way they did the underside is really difficult to go in and just weld along a pinch weld. So what we did is there's a couple of bolts front and rear that are really handy, and you can see what we've done is we've made access. This bolts right to with existing bolts, existing bolt holes. So it's just slick as can be to bolt right up. But what's unique is the fact that these aren't tubes like everybody else. These are fabricated jacking rails. And the reason they're fabricated is because there's a 5-degree slant on the body where this would mount to. So what we did is the bottom is perpendicular to the ground, so it's level and perpendicular to the ground. But because this is a trapezoid and not a rectangle, we get this 5-degree angle in here, so it just bolts up firm to the chassis. Bolts firm to the chassis, and then the bottom is perpendicular. It's something nobody else is doing, but we decided that this is going to be the best way for the 550 cars. And it's like a 20-minute bolt on. It's a piece of cake, but sure makes a difference when jacking up the cars. So that's the only under chassis support we have that's a bolt on, and not a weld on. For the Fox SN95s, we weld everything under the chassis because if you're bolting, you're having to create holes, and they're not going to last. It's going to wobble and work itself loose. And besides, Ford doesn't bolt the bodies together. But on the 550s, there's already 2 strong points, 2 existing bolt holes, so they're not going to wobble or move around. It's just going to be a really nice mount. So I think we're going to move on to strut tower braces. The strut tower brace is pretty interesting. Back in '86 in the Celine cars, I mean, we really struggled to make the '86 cars race worthy. And one of the things is we always have problems getting them. They didn't really want to turn. I mean, they go like stink in a straight line, but stopping and turning were 2 big issues. So one of the solutions I came up with is I built a 3-point strut tower brace, and we put it on both cars, the '86 cars for Road Atlanta. And unfortunately, the FCCA tech people came up and said, well, that's not part of the production car, so you can't run it. So we could use it for that weekend, but we couldn't use it the rest of the season. But, that was kind of a clue, and it really did make a difference. So what we did on the 80, we kind of re-engineered the whole Celine street cars over the winter between '86 and '87. So that I got all the things into the production car that I needed for the race cars. 3-point strut tower brace was part of it. 4-wheel disc brakes was another. 5 lugs. So there's a bunch of stuff that from the race program fed right into the production cars. So in '87, and that point forward, all the Celine cars had a 3-point strut tower brace. And this is kind of a pretty close to an example of what was originally on the '86 Celine cars. Right now, I mean, we used to have quite a few strut tower braces, but right now the only one we actually have in production is for the 03-04 Cobra. And yeah. And again, you can see all our stuff is just really super high quality. This is our kind of signature powder coat. It's a kind of a really cool gray metallic. And you can see that we bolt that right to the top of the strut tower and then back to the firewall. And that creates, you would think that it creates one triangulation, but in reality, I got to go back to the beginning again. In reality, it creates 3 triangulations. So here's the most obvious one, strut tower to firewall. But if you take a look, you also have, this is a triangulation here. We're triangulating, we're bridging the gap between in the corner, which makes this a triangle and makes this a triangle. So we're actually putting 3 triangles in the front of a car. We put 4 triangles per side under the car and putting 3 triangles in front. And then in the back, we're putting actually 3 triangles if you look at it this way, the rear shock tower brace. So I love triangles. Now the 197s came out. This is not a firewall. This is just thin sheet metal, and it's a divider between the engine compartment and the firewall. And to me, there was no real value in tying into that because it was pretty flexy. So we just went with a 2-point strut tower brace, which really made a big difference. So much so, I can't remember what year, but Ford eventually started putting 2-point strut tower braces on their cars. But we were the first one to come out with this in 05 when the cars first came out. And we used to build these. We'll probably get them back in production someday, but this was our inner skeleton, as we called it, the super street cage. And this really has a huge amount of internal structure. And even though it looks like it might be a 6-point, in all actuality, it was an 8-point. We've got the main hoop. So there's 2 points there. We've got the rear bars. There's 2 points there. We've got the front bars. There's 2 points there. But also, these little tabs up here, we actually bolt that to the seat bolt, the seat belt bolt in the B pillar, which actually makes it more rigid. So we've got, I think, just a handful of these left. We'll probably get back into producing these maybe next year. We've got a lot of things we've got to get caught up on. We just, as a lot of you know, just to bring to market this new rear suspension, it's kind of taken up a lot of time, but it's moving along nicely. I think we might be almost ready to do another little presentation for the next group of people on the new Kenny Brown K-Link rear suspension. That's phenomenal. But we do have for the S197 and 550 cars is a 4-point roll bar. We have a lot of our track day guys are going over this because they don't use the back seat on track. So we're doing a rear seat delete and then doing the 4-point roll bar. But it's handy because it has this crossbar, which is really handy to wrap seat belts around for track days. So that's kind of the where we've ended up with on chassis. Here we go. I guess Carrie put a nice little thing in here. Next week, I guess we're talking about IRS versus live axle, and for show and tell or IRS carrier mod. Well, we do. It's pretty interesting, and it's we're the only people that really cater and specialize in 99 to 04 Cobras and the Mustang IRS. And part of our upgrades is we completely changed all the geometry, and that's something we'll be talking about next week. So I need to. Yeah, I guess I'm back. Did I go? I guess I'm back. Okay. I'll take care. I was really struggling with trying to do the share thing today for some reason.
Yep, shows how much you miss me. So I've actually figured out how to do it virtually. So we'll practice that for the next one.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, because I start to panic when I can't get things to work. And not having here is just kind of it's kind of like one hand tied behind my back, but I'm getting by. So that's kind of what we're talking about. And the whole idea of stiffening a chassis is, first of all, so the suspension works better. If you've got a chassis that flexes, what that ends up being is that is a fifth unwanted and unmanageable suspension component. Okay, because if springs and shocks are going up and down, but if the chassis is kind of doing this thing, if it's twisting, you don't have any way to control the twist. For the oscillation of the wheel, you got a shock to control the spring oscillation. But if the chassis is twisting, there's nothing there to control it, which is why we go to a stiffer chassis. And one of the things that people notice, like right away, I mean, you put like the matrix system on, you don't have to go about 100 yards, so you can feel the difference. I mean, it's that significant. But a little trick that's important is anytime people put my chassis system on, I strongly recommend that they make sure the doors are closed. If it's a convertible, top up, doors closed. But you have to support the car under the suspension points, not under the chassis, under the suspension points, because you want the car to be pretty much sitting as it would on the ground. Because once you weld that stuff in place, it's there. And we've had instances where people have not paid attention to that, and they put it up on a 4-point hoist, welded it in, set down the ground, and then the doors won't work. That's because that shows you just how much the car bows. And they have to do, they get back and cut them off and re-put them on. So it's important that if you put any kind of chassis structure on underneath, that you get it supported under the axle, under the front suspension arms, so that it's as if it were sitting on the ground. So that's kind of the thing, and it also takes away squeaks and rattles. Those cars get older, they squeak and rattle. So that's, the problem was that the Mustang, the unibody Mustangs, especially in the Fox, were really flimsy, almost like a tin can. We would actually see instances with Fox cars where guys would split the floor. I mean, actually split the floor right behind the driver's seat from the outside right over the top of the tunnel. If there's enough force to just split the floor, you can imagine just how much those cars actually move. When we first started doing it, we could jack up, like a front wheel, and the front wheel be off the ground and the back wheel still be on the ground. But once we put the chassis stuff on, you jack up the front wheel, everything moves up together. So it's really, really important. That's my solution to a nagging problem on Mustangs. So I think I've got through everything. I think we might be up to questions. Have we got any questions this morning, Carrie?
We sure do. We have some questions, but first I want to take a moment to wish everybody a happy Father's Day. This is Father's Day weekend, and have a great day. Tomorrow we're having a brunch at our house with our son and grandchildren, and obviously daughter-in-law. So we're going to have a nice morning tomorrow and watch the F1 race. Where's the F1 race from, Kenny?
France.
France.
Yep. The French Grand Prix. From Paul Ricard, which could be interesting. The whole Formula One season this year is really getting interesting. But also, I'm making my signature biscuits and gravy to go with that, and fresh squeezed orange juice. So we're gonna have a good morning. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Ready?
Yeah.
So we have a question here from Rory. Are battle box reinforcements a must for the IRS and a Fox? Do you know what a battle box is, Kenny?
Nope.
Okay, here's Brad's description of it, so you know. Battle box is a reinforcement assembly that welds the pickup points for the rear lower control arms where they mount to the chassis. These can sometimes crack or separate. He also adds that they're much more common in drag racing as opposed to road racing. Okay. And these are for Fox and SN95 cars. So again, Rory's question is, are battle box reinforcements a must for the IRS and a Fox?
We don't do that, and the reason is, first of all, with our you'll see with our IRS mod, there's a great big mallet in the back that goes from the IRS carrier to the frame rail, and it's big and clunky. It's in the way. It weighs a lot. We actually cut them off and we weld on a bracket that bolts right to the frame rail, which pretty much locks the IRS carrier in place. You don't have to do anything else at the front or anything. It locks it solid. And then for the pickup points on the suspension, those are all reworked and reinforced. So we really haven't had any need to do anything else to it. At least, but we don't do drag racing. In fact, I highly recommend against drag racing with an IRS car. IRS cars are not meant to drag race. They're more for road racing. There's a number of reasons, but it's just they don't make good drag cars. Back in 99 and 2000, when the Cobra first came out, I was ecstatic to see an IRS because I'd work on IRS cars back in the 70s, and I owned the Formula Fords and Formula Atlantics, but also like the Triumph, Spitfires, and TR6, and Datsun 240Zs. They all had IRS, so I was really familiar with it. But the drag race people, back then were pulling the IRS out and putting live axles in, which is the correct thing to do. I mean, if you're going to go drag racing, you need a live axle because you actually dial in anti-squat. And it's really hard to get, significant anti-squat into an IRS car just because of the architecture of the geometry. So, we don't, we haven't had any need to do any battle box reinforcements. Again, if it's something for drag racing, then I suggest you check with somebody that does drag racing. But something we never do because we have never had a need for it. Okay, what else?
Okay, so we have so Crossfire is going to put you on the spot here. So are you ready for his question? Okay. Anything on the horizon for Fox body Mustangs? Now, do you want to say or not?
It's on the horizon, but it's a distant horizon. The answer is just, just two of the things I want to do. It's on my list, but it won't be till at least next year. Is going to be a decent rear suspension for the Fox. Nobody's done a proper rear suspension for them ever. And we've got really good geometry in our AGS 4.0 on the 197 cars. So what I really want to do is do a bolt-in 4-link for the Fox with the current geometry, which will just change those cars completely. And then also I want to bring to market a double wishbone for the front. But we've got some in prototypes that were been tested that work really, really well. Just a matter of bandwidth and getting to that. So maybe a year or so off is the best guess. But yeah, I mean, it's something I really want to do. I mean, this Fox stuff has been in my head for the last 10 years. Because I just knew how popular Foxes were going to be again. So yeah, it drives me nuts. So there, I'm on the spot and I wiggled out of it.
Okay, here we go. Yeah, Kenny can develop more products in 1 week than we can get out to market in 1 or 2 years. So, the corporation is more of a holdup than him. So he's got tons of product ideas and things he's been working on as far as prototypes. Here's another question from Crossfire. A friend of mine put an S550 IRS to his Fox body, required custom front brackets, rear bolts through the frame rails, and big rear flares. What is your opinion of an S550 versus a SVT IRS as a swap for Foxes?
Personally, I'd stick with the SVT IRS. It's a simple bolt-in. We've got all the go-fast pieces you need to make it work. The thing about the 550 IRS is that it packages really, really well. I mean, it's just a cool package. I mean, it's compact, but you do have a really wide rear track. The other thing is that the 550 cars have a whole bunch of nannies built in as far as stability control and a bunch of other things to make the cars handle really well. What we have seen over the years is people with 550 cars, if they turn all the nanny devices off, like turn it all off, the cars get really loose. And most of the crashes that we've seen with 550 cars have been backed into the wall because they turned all the nanny devices off, they got loose and then backed away. So what that's telling me is the core geometry could use some help. I mean, from Ford's perspective, they're going to engineer a rear suspension around a whole bunch of parameters, and that we don't look at. I mean, they've got a ton of different things they have to engineer to, where we're just looking at pure performance. So as far as ease, quick and easy, down and dirty, and we can both the SVT in the thanks, Rich. We can bolt the SVT in the Fox just slick as me. In fact, we've actually modified our rear brackets. Okay, remember I said the brackets that bolt to the frame rail? Well, they were originally set up for SN95. However, we've since made some adjustments and added another hole so they can be bolted right onto a Fox car. So, I mean, I would stick with the Fox. I mean, doing the 550 is a lot of work, and then you've got how's it going to handle? And how's it going to work with the front suspension? So, I mean, you got to think about globally, because my suspensions are systems, not parts. There's parts in them, but they are systems. Like there's for the 197, the rear grip kit, and the front grip kit, and springs and shocks, only 3 elements. For the IRS, we've got, 4 levels of IRS upgrades for the back, and then we've got the front grip kit, and it all works together as a system. So just doing the 550, it'd be kind of a cool project, but I don't know that the result would be worth the effort, especially when you can get there for a lot less hassle with the and have a suspension that really works well with the SVT. Okay.
So this is something you haven't spoken about for a while. Here's your next question. What is the artwork today, Kenny?
Oh my gosh, I forgot. Okay, artwork today. Okay, this is. This is 1967 at Zandvoort for the Grand Prix, and Formula One's actually going to be at this very track this season again. I think in a few weeks. I have to look at the schedule, but I thought because Formula One's going back to Zandvoort this year, and that was Jimmy Clark when he introduced the new Ford V8, the Cosworth V8, and that went on to be the dominant engine in Formula One for a number of years. So that's my boyhood hero, Jimmy Clark. In the Lotus, the legendary livery on the Lotus Formula One cars. So yeah, I've got a number of artwork, and this is another one by Nicholas Watts. I've got quite a few pieces by him. These are all and signed by. Now you can't really see this, but I think that's the artist. I think this Dick Scanelli was one of the mechanics, and Keith Duckworth. Keith Duckworth was part of Cosworth. He's the Worth in Cosworth. So it's a pretty cool piece of art, and one of my favorites. Okay.
Here's another question, and before I read this, this is last call for questions. So I thought this was a pretty interesting question too, Kenny. I think you'll have fun answering this. Reason I mentioned the S550 is the SVT parts are getting hard to find. Any plans to produce your own Iris knuckles since Ford parts are long out of production? I have an entire Gen 1 RS on my 88 GT.
Oh, funny you should mention that. Yeah, we have been playing hell trying to find the rear uprights. Now we know somebody that's building a billet rear upright, but it was designed more for drifting, and there's some issues using it for road race cars and with our brake packages. I've actually talked with Bill at Fabrication about doing our own spindle. And the thing, when we do our rear upright, we're going to change the bearings, because right now that's the weak point of the factory rear upright, is the fact they use a double ball bearing wheel bearing that's from like a Taurus front wheel drive car, which is great for fuel economy and rolling resistance, but they aren't worth a squat for performance because they flex a lot. To give you an idea, back when we were in 2004, I think, we were running a Cobra in a World Challenge, and we had a good, really nice big brakes in the front, and we were trying to put big brakes in the back, and just really were struggling with pad knockback. And so one time we took a spindle and we bolted it to one of the beams that held up the building and put a bar on it, and the whole thing bent. So okay, we can fix that. So we went back and we welded in some gussets to strengthen up the upright, and we went testing at Groton with Ford Racing and some other people, and it didn't last but 3 laps. And then Rich just handed me something. Lost my train. It didn't last 3 laps, and all of a sudden the wheel and the axle and everything goes flying across the track. What had happened is that even though we stabilized the upright, there was so much flex in the bearing, the rotor actually came all the way over and wore through the bottom of the upright to the bearing, the lower bearing, and it just popped out. So that tells you how much wobble is in those wheel bearings. So if we do, I should say when, it's on the list, along with a lot of other things. When we do an upright, it's going to have better double roller bearings, so that you put big brakes on the back. So yeah, I mean, we're thinking about it, because we were having trouble getting them too. Okay.
So Kenny, can you tell me a little bit about your whiteboard has changed in the back, and tell us a little bit about what are those lines on the whiteboard? I'm sure a lot of people are wondering what that's all about.
Well, this is a hybrid version of tic-tac-toe. No, actually, this is from the Speed Therapy Academy when we're doing tire temperatures. I use this as an example. Put the tire temperatures like outside, middle, inside, outside, middle, inside, and then we'll, like, for one run, and then we'll make the second set of temperatures based off of the pressure adjustment. So that's all part of my teaching how to work tire pressures, how to work to use tire temperatures to get your pressures right, and then also adjust your suspension.
And that's taught in the Speed Therapy Academy. Is that correct?
Yep, that's part of the Speed Therapy Academy.
Okay, so we have another question here, but I want to say one more time, this is last call for any questions before the big Father's Day tomorrow. So here we go. I'll let Kenny take a drink and I'll continue to jabber along. Here we go. Kobe has a question. Do you really think that a strut tower brace is beneficial on the S197? There's lots of debate by internet experts.
Okay, I'm going to start internet experts. Yeah, there is.
You've started something, Kobe.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I keep telling people the two worst places to get information, get quality information, is the paddock and the internet. The third is the guy down the street that knows everything. It's just, I mean, all you have to do is think about it. I mean, you've got loads coming into one strut tower, and if you could just put a brace, even doesn't have to be 3-point, just 2-point, side to side. If the load goes into that one, having a brace on there is going to help transfer some of that load over to the other side and keep that from loading up, moving so much. So absolutely. It's don't listen to internet experts. They have no idea what they're talking about for the most part. I mean, problem with people on the internet is they don't know what they don't know. But yeah, I mean, it just makes sense. I mean, if you've got loads going into one shock tower or strut tower, and it's just pushing, it's going to push it up and down. But if you had a brace from there over to the other one, all of a sudden they're going to be sharing the load. And that's like half the load then goes into each, so that car will handle better. And you get better tire wear, and the line will stay better.
Okay, I just wanted to make a comment. We're having a lot of IRS SN95 questions today. And obviously Kenny does a lot of S550s and S197 Mustangs. But what I wanted to mention specifically to you, SN95 and Fox body cars, is that Kenny will be doing another IRS workshop. It will be a one-night workshop. It'll last 2 hours. So we'll be having a sign up for that. So kind of look for that. It'll be in the next couple of months. We haven't specifically set a date yet, but kind of look for that. Another thing is we have our brake workshop coming up. That will be this next month. We're yet to set the date, or we changed the date because the Facebook rules have changed. Working through that process. But here is a couple more questions, Kenny. They're going so fast here.
Okay, well, okay, that's a good piece of news to all you IRS guys that I'm doing a workshop. But it's also a good piece of news to me, because now I know I'm doing a workshop. Okay.
Yeah, we get a lot of IRS, and then the S197 people have been requesting a workshop too, Kenny. I think you could do a workshop every week, and we keep you very busy. Okay, here's one from Greg. How do you know what starting cold pressures to start the day with any given race slick?
Okay, race
slick.
Okay, race slicks are different than track tires or street tires. I mean, a true race slick like a Pirelli works to an absolute pressure. And it's kind of like the only way to know where cold starting pressures are to start where you left off. I'm going to work backwards from slicks, because I'm not a fan of slicks on track day cars, because really to get the most out of the slick, you need really high spring rates and really good shocks. To give you an example, it's like, a stock Mustang has a front spring rate of 130. I'm talking 197 and 138 to 150, somewhere in there. Our track day, advanced track day cars with good track tires are 650 front spring. On my late Paul's World Challenge Mustang, on Pirelli slicks, it was 850 to 950 spring rate with motorsport, real race shocks. So, I mean, I'm not a big fan of putting slicks on a track day car unless you've got it really set up, because there's a number of reasons. I'll talk about that on a separate time. But
okay.
I'm going to start with street car tires and work back to the race tires. With the street tires, like on my car, I would start with around 32 to 34, depending on the day in the front, and then 20 to 29 rear, and then do the tire temperatures and bleed them down and get to the right temperatures and pressures. And then what we do is at the very end of the day, after we spent the morning, the afternoon getting the pressure just perfect, at the end of the day we let everything cool down and go back and check the pressures. And whatever those pressures were that evening when the tires are cold would be our new cold starting pressures. So that's kind of like the way you have to work. Now with a slick, you're going to, like, I know Pirelli's the best because I work with them the most. Pirelli wants you to run 30 to 34 pounds worth of pressure, and they're an absolute. With like a track tire or a street tire, you can go around, by the time you're done, at the end of the day, you're going to have 4 different pressures on 4 different tires, because you're asking each tire to do a different job. Okay, the left front's working the hardest, the left rear, it's a clockwise track, left rear is working second, right front, and the right rear is just kind of hanging on. So you're going to get 4 different pressures based on which tire, what each tire is doing. For slick, because of the construction, the sidewall construction, they work specifically to a pressure like 30 to 34. We seem to always end up right around 32, sometimes 33, but mostly 32. The only way to do that is to start higher than that and, go out and run hard. And when the tires feel weird, come in and bleed them down to the right pressure. But yeah, if you're not running a really high spring rate, there's potentials for things to happen. And that's why I'm not a fan of slicks on track day cars.
But okay, so just to let you know that Greg has an FR500S is what he's driving.
Huh.
Yeah, so I didn't want to interrupt you earlier. So
okay, well, depends on what now I engineered 3 cars in the Mustang Challenge FR500S cars, and we ran the BFG slicks back then. And I know that we were just updated Cliff's FR500S to 2011 World Challenge specs. Those chassis suspension. He got the new rear suspension on top of it. Plus, we did the engine upgrades, and it's making like 380 rear horsepower, around 440 flywheel. So it's a pretty quick car. But he's still running the BFGs. I mean, if you do go up to slicks, I mean, I suggest a better shock than what came on them. The sack shocks are not that good. I mean, I didn't like them back then, and Cliff had a bunch of problems with his. We switched him over to the JRZ Club shocks. But if you really want to run like Pirellis and stuff, I recommend a Motorsport shock. It's a pretty high spring rates. But I mean, if you need help with that, just set up a 15-minute consult, and we can kind of talk about it. Okay.
So and you can set up a 15-minute consult by Brad will add the link to sign up with the consult. It's Kenny's calendar when he's available, or else you can just call in at 317-396-2768 and we'll set you up. Let's see. Crossfire. Here's another one from Crossfire. Here we go. If Kenny made his own IRS knuckles, literally could build his own drop-in SVT-based IRS without anything but aftermarket axles, could make a tubular carrier if cores dry up. So, and he says that he finds those all the time. Oh, he might have to get in touch with you. Yeah.
Actually, the carriers are not that hard to find. It's the spindles and the differentials are the tough thing. But yeah, something else we talked about going forward, because we're going to continue to support the IRS, is actually doing our own carrier that already has the geometry modifications already built into it. So again, that's on our long list of new products. There's going to be at least a year away or so. But yeah, we thought about that. And then if we did that, then we might even do a different center section that's a little more robust. So you're thinking like I'm thinking.
Yep. And let's see. Oops, that's Brad's comment there. So again, the 15-minute is a really good way. There's not many people in the industry that open up their schedule to talk one-on-one with you. So if you have any questions, tech questions, or want to put their build plan, Kenny's available. Just click on that link for the 15-minute. The other thing I wanted to add is a lot of people don't know about the Kenny Brown Speed Therapy Society Facebook. Kenny, it's a private Facebook group that Kenny interacts with, and it's just a really good group of like-minded people in that. So if you're interested in that, I'm sure Brad will be putting up a link to join the Speed Therapy Society Facebook group. If you don't get the link, you just can look up Kenny Brown Speed Therapy Society on Facebook, and you'll find the group. Okay, Kenny, I think
that's where the questions come from. I talk about questions and subjects come through from the Speed Therapy Society.
And that's also where any workshop that's Kenny's doing or any points of interest is shown in there, so you'll get a notification in there. I think that might be it for the questions, Kenny. So a good session today.
Yeah.
Really enjoyed hearing about the chassis support.
So yeah, apparently we have a lot of interest in IRS, which is cool, because like I say, we're the only people in the aftermarket that support it, not only support it, but actually know what we're talking about. Like I said, when the IRS came out in '99, I was happy as a clam. Everybody else in the Mustang market were not reflected. They just didn't know what to do. But for me, it was like wonderful, because I worked with it so many times, so much in my past history. I worked with IRS that was just a piece of cake, and I just like the way they work. I mean, you get the geometry right in the back, front grip kit, and the rear geometry, like on Kermie, my 2001 track day car, which actually started out life as a V6 Mustang for SEMA that Ford wanted me to do, because I think it was like a problem with V8s or something back then. So they wanted to draw attention to V6. Anyway, we turned that into Cobra with our IRS in the back, our front grip kit in the front, and then it started out with a supercharged V6 because that's what Ford wanted. But then we switched over, in association with Ford Racing back then, so actually switched it over to a prototype FR500S, FR500 4-valve engine, which was kind of cool. Thing made some really good power. So, okay, if no more questions came in, I think we can probably wrap up for today. If you got questions, or if there's a specific subject matter you'd like me to talk about, send it into the Speed Therapy Society. And like I say, that's all my questions and subjects come out of Speed Therapy Society. So we want to talk about something else, and apparently I'm doing an IRS workshop in the future. So with that, if there's nobody else, then I'm glad you could join me this morning. Happy Father's Day to all the fathers out there, and enjoy the rest of the week.